Tonight's top 5 video was requested by OAW patron Khalil Young. Salute to you, sir. And if you have a request for a top 5 video, become a patron at patreon.com/OAW and select the top 5 tier. In addition to your request for a top 5 video, you also get access to all Patreon exclusive content. You get access to the OAW Vault, which is the collection of Otaku Assemble Weekly, the original anime manga review web series that kicked off the channel. You get access to the OAW Discord server, which is now finally up and running. So you get access to that. And last but certainly not least, you get an invite to join in on the live monthly Q&A held right here on the OAW YouTube channel, as well as the OAW Facebook page and Twitch channel. So once again, that is patreon.com/OAW and select that top 5 tier. And with that being said, this is my top 5, my list for top 5 favorite superhero performances. So let's get it started.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Greetings to everyone watching live and everyone watching after the fact. Shout out to the faithful and salute to the patrons. This is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, here to bring you all another top 5 video. How is everyone going? I know I am late on this one, but I hope you all had a very good weekend. Hope you all had a very safe and joyous Easter holiday. But yeah, so I'm here to bring you all my list of my top 5 favorite superhero performances. So what's funny about this one, actually, I had more difficulty coming up with the title for this video than I did the actual list, because essentially what the request was top 5 favorite live action big screen comic book character portrayals. But as you guys can imagine, that is way too damn long of a title to fit for this video. So I just went ahead and here's the other thing too. I kind of cheated on this list. I kind of cheated because it felt disingenuous for me to leave out any small screen comic book character performances. So I decided to include just any and all live action comic book character portrayals. Oh, and then the other thing too is, part of a really good portrayal isn't just how the character is written or how the character is presented. It also has to do with the actor or actress portraying said character and their performance. So that's when I just finally came down and said, you know what? We're just going to call this one top 5 favorite superhero performances, and all of the other things I will list in the description box below to really get down to what it is. So that's what I'm going to be giving you all tonight. Is going to be my list, my top 5 favorite live action comic book character portrayals in superhero film and television. Cool? All right. So real quick, just want to remind you guys that if time permits, we'll be taking questions and comments. But if you want to make sure that your question or comment gets read live on the air before the end of tonight's broadcast, you can always drop a super chat. Those help out the channel a lot. Also, you can support the channel via Cash App and PayPal. The links are in the description box below. And last, but certainly not least, I want to throw this out there to you guys. I have another challenge for you all watching live, another top 5 challenge. I will be, as I announced at the very beginning of the video, that the OAW Discord server is finally up and running. I will be giving a free invite to the viewer who can name my #1 all-time favorite live action comic book character performance. If you can guess what the #1 is, and if you're the first one to list it in the comments, I will go ahead and send you the invite link to join the OAW Discord server. Right now, the server is only available to fellow YouTube collaborators and patrons. I will be opening it up to members of the channel once I kick off the membership for the YouTube channel. But you can go ahead and you can skip the line if you can name my #1 favorite live action comic book character performance. First one to do so in the comments below. And so the clock starts now and it ends once I reach honorable mentions. All right. So let's go ahead and let's kick things off with #5 on my list. And #5 on my list is none other. Let me go ahead and add my graphic. So yeah, coming in at #5 is Mr. Jackie Earl Haley for his performance as Rorschach in Watchmen, in the Watchmen film. All right, so Jackie Earl Haley, he was one of the first ones I came up with just because he's his performance is one of the ones that that when I first saw it, I'm like, if there was ever one that was the character straight off the page, straight off the page onto the big screen, Jackie Earl Haley, his performance, one of those. He was so good in the role, and for me, it was so iconic. I can't even read Watchmen without hearing his voice when I'm reading Rorschach's lines. That's how natural he was to the role. He was great. Just everything he brought to the performance was great. I particularly liked how what I could perceive as his read on Rorschach, because granted, yes, this does sort of have to also do with Schneider and the way in which he interpreted the material, because Watchmen is another one of those comic book adaptations that for the most part is panel for panel until you get to like the third act. Well, actually, I rephrase that. Actually, halfway through the second act is when Schneider really starts to sort of add his own material to the film and sort of add his own flair to things. But by and large, most of the film is just straight panel to panel. And I also think that the way in which Rorschach was depicted in the film, I think was very flattering compared to his characterization in the original source material. Because if you go back and read Watchmen, Rorschach is not a nice guy. He's not a nice guy, and he's not really a good guy. But what he is he is an Avenger. He is an Avenger. That much is consistent with that character in both iterations of this story, in the graphic novel as well as on the film. He is an Avenger, and let's face it. He is every ist you could probably think of. He is every ophobe you could probably think of. But the one thing that he does have is this almost righteous sort of sense of judgment that he uses to enact his acts of vengeance on people, on criminals and crooks and what have you. Granted, is he the one in the best position to be exacting said vengeance? No. But that's sort of the thing about Rorschach that kind of makes him somewhat of an underdog character, is because he is on this, one-man fight against crime and corruption, knowing good and goddamn well he'll lose. He does know that. I don't think there's been any read on the character, and it's in the source material. It's right there that Rorschach is highly cynical, extremely pessimistic, and downright fucking nihilistic for the most part. He doesn't think the world will change outside of what he can actually affect on the world. And even then, he knows that he's going to die eventually. So, but all of those things that I think work well to make that character sort of its own thing, Jackie Earl Haley just took that and he ran with it. And he really did provide what I thought was a great performance. And like I said, it's definitely one of my favorites. I really, really enjoyed his performance. So that's why he made it number 5 on my list. All right. So let us, as we proceed, to bring you what you need. All right. So number 4 should be no surprise to anyone, honestly. I've already talked about this character at length in previous videos. And everyone already knows you know what? I'm gonna get some stones thrown at me real quick though, because the title says superhero performances, but as we know, this man's a super villain. And as I reiterated at the beginning of the video, that was a shorthand title for live action comic book character portrayals and performances, right? So anyway, with that being said, number 4 on my list is Michael Fassbender as Magneto. Like I said, already gone at length about how much I love Magneto. He is my favorite comic book villain. Definitely one of my favorite comic book characters. And in terms of his on-screen portrayals, really, it's between Fassbender and Ian McKellen. Some OG fans, they love McKellen just because he was the first to do it and because how great of an actor he is in his own right. Why do I pick Fassbender? Fassbender is definitely going to be one of the ones that sort of leans itself more to the material So, okay, how about this? On one hand, I can argue it leans itself towards the material. On the other hand, I have to argue that his performance is better than some of the material he's been given, because Fassbender portrays Magneto in a total of 4 films, and of the 4, only 2 of them are good. So half of the films that he's in portraying this character aren't even good, right? But he is one of the more enjoyable things about those films, whereas the first 2, where he was actually good, I mean, performance and writing, just the way they handled that character, I thought were really good. The reason why I love Fassbender's Magneto so much is because he's scary. And that's one thing that I always want from a good villain, but especially a good comic book villain. I want the ones who scare me. And Fassbender his Magneto scared the ever loving crap out of me. Not so much in First Class, because First Class was sort of the origin story. So we had to see how Eric became Magneto, if you will. And yeah, he does, sort of get, he does get rather gruesome. And some of his best scenes are in that first movie, particularly the diner scene when he's infiltrating. He's pretty much tracking down all of these old German soldiers who worked and were in charge of the concentration camps and whatnot during World War II. The ones that he remembers, that he recognized, because he's working his way up this hierarchy to try and find Sebastian Shaw, who was the main villain of First Class. And so he's knocking off, the German officers one by one, right? Just he has a list, and he's, checking it twice, and he's just, kicking ass and taking names. But just that scene in and of itself let us know that we were dealing with a very, a more hard-edged, a more ruthless interpretation of Magneto than we have seen prior. And because he is not above just outright murder to get what he wants. Granted, McKallen's did too, but Fassbender is definitely more passionate about it, just because First Class for him, like, this is a revenge tale, right? He is exacting vengeance on the people who killed his family and whatnot, right? But my all-time favorite Fassbender scene is the during the climax of First Class, when both the Cuban and U.S. Navy essentially have fired on the island to try and wipe everybody out. And Magneto, he stops all the missiles. And so Charles is trying to talk him down as he's doing it. And so he stops all the missiles, and he's just looking at him, right? And Charles says to him, he's like, Eric, please, these men, like, they're not bad men. They're just following order. And Magneto just looks, and he says, I've been at the mercy of men just following orders. And then he throws the missiles back at him. I love that scene so much. It's so cool. But no, actually, the performance from Fassbender that really scared the ever loving shit out of me was in Days of Futures Past, when they finally managed to track down Mystique, and Mystique gets hit by the bullet, right? When she's fleeing the building, when she goes out of the window, and she gets shot in the leg, and then Eric, goes, he follows her out of the window, and he starts to drag her by the bullet in her leg, and helplessly dragging her out. Dude, that felt like something straight out of a monster film, straight out of a horror movie. And of course, another one of my favorite lines from First Class is when Eric refers to himself as Frankenstein's monster, and I'm looking for my creator. And that's what he said, referring to Shaw in the first film. So, but that scene when he's dragging Mystique by the bullet across that freaking courtyard. Oh my God, dude. Woo, that boy's so good. And Fassbender does it, man. He has a commanding presence in that role. Really, really good. Really, really good performance. So yeah, that's why he is number 4 on my list. All right. So now, of course, number 3 is going to be no surprise to anybody whatsoever because of course, number 1, what I'm wearing, and number 2, what was used in the thumbnail. But yeah, number 3 on my list is Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. What can I say, man? Right, dude, Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. I mean, what can be said about the man's performance that hasn't already been said by hundreds of thousands of people in previous videos and analysis and whatnot? But this is one performance where I think it's actually the perfect blend of actor and material. As a lot of you may already know, much of Iron Man 1 was ad-libbed. So a lot of those scenes was pretty much Robert Downey Jr. just playing the role, coming up with things off the top of his head, just living in the moment, just being the character, if you will. And then, of course, the way in which Tony was adapted for these films, which the funny thing about that is, personality wise, I would say that the Tony in the MCU is very much still the Tony from the comics. The only difference is where they eventually end up taking the characters, because the Tony from the comics is a little bit more serious, and he's a little bit more serious, and he's more like calculating, if you will. He is a bit more of an intellectual. He sort of has that Reed Richards thing going for him, where at times he sort of loses perspective of humanity, and he's just thinking about, things in terms of numbers and figures, right? But when it comes to him interacting with other characters, in terms of, just his likability, how personable he can be, that was Robert Downey Jr. And I would even go as far as to say this too: even the comedic sensibilities of Tony that we are accustomed to now is Robert Downey Jr.'s contribution, because prior to 2008, you didn't see a lot of that in the comics with Tony. His comedic sensibilities was very quippish. And granted, this is because of Bendis writing the character for as long as he did, right, in the Avengers comics. But like, Tony's flavor of humor in the comics was the same that you would see with, like, say, Spider-Man, for an example, or maybe even Thor. It was that quippy sort of humor. But it wasn't that like natural sort of improv comedy sense that it is. The witty retort, just being able to bounce dialogue back at you, or to be able to rebound off of a line from another character. True quippage, if you will. That's sort of like what's the term I'm looking for? That's sort of like speedball kind of comedy and kind of timing. That's Robert Downey Jr. That was his interpretation of that character, his version of Tony Stark. And it's had a lasting impression, because now you don't see a version of Tony that isn't reminiscent of the Robert Downey Jr. version. You really don't. And I tend to believe that that's sort of the mark of a really good performance and a really good portrayal of a character, is when, once again, I don't know who originally said it, but I always get the quote from Dave Chappelle from that episode of Inside the Actor's Studio, where Dave says that the true mark of greatness is when everything before you is rendered obsolete and everything after you bears your mark. Now, I'm not saying that everything before Robert Downey Jr. took on the role is obsolete. No, because we've had there are plenty of great Iron Man stories. But I will say this, though: that character, who Tony is now, is very much contributed to Robert Downey Jr. And for better or worse, I'm going to tell you this: for better or worse, because I know I got some OG, Marvel comic book fan loyalists who don't care for the change. Because, the argument always with that is, why is it that everything that they do on either television or in film, why does that have to reflect itself within the comics? Like, how come they can't be two separate things? You know what I mean? In terms of the way that characters are portrayed and the material that the comics decide to engage in, the types of stories they decide to tell. Why can't we keep these two things separate? That's always that argument. And I agree. Maybe they should be kept separate. Maybe we just need more, a greater contrast of material in mainstream superhero comics to begin with. True enough. But I will say this, and this is where the Iron Man fans are going to come after me hard. But come on, guys, knock it off. Let's be real. Nobody gave a shit about Tony before 2008. Nobody did. Let's be real about that. Nobody did. So the fact that he was able to get a lot of new fans invested in the character, even if those fans aren't comic readers, that's not the point. It's not about turning those viewers into comic readers. I wish that was the case, but what I'm arguing for right now isn't necessarily about that. It's about increasing the profile of the character, the public consciousness of that character. People are a hell of a lot more appreciative of Iron Man now than they were before. So just keep that in mind. That's all I'm saying. And Robert Downey Jr. has something to do with that. Yeah. Real quick. Shout out to my man, Random Black Gamer. What's happening, homie? He said, facts. Nobody cared for Tony nor Cap during the 2000s until these films hit. I'm not going to say that about Cap, because if you recall Civil War, that was in the 2000s. And the issue where Cap got killed, that was 2007, I believe. And people were pissed. I remember reading those stories. People were pissed. They were pissed. But then again, Captain America, I think, was always a more popular character than Iron Man was from the get-go, just because Captain America is an OG Golden Age hero. So I think Cap was already kind of more popular than Tony anyhow. Okay, so that is number 3 on my list. I see some more people coming in. Welcome. Thank you for joining, guys. Thank you for joining. All right, so now I'm going to my number 2. Now, my number 2 should be a surprise to nobody. It honestly and truly shouldn't, but you know how these lists go, so here we go. All right, number 2 on my list is none other than the man, the legend, the late, great Chadwick Boseman, for his portrayal as Black Panther. So yeah, I've gone on record in previous videos, especially if you guys have seen the Black Panther commentary that I did, which was a charity stream in honor of Chadwick Boseman. I was psyched for this one. As soon as Chadwick was announced, the initial casting news came out. Loved every second he was on screen. Every second he appeared as the character, the level of dedication that he gave to the performance, especially now that we know he was sick that entire time when he was filming those films, the genuineness of it. And yeah, there were a lot of circumstances outside of him that made that film as iconic as it became. And then, of course, his passing is what made the casting and his performance as memorable, I think, that it will be now. That's not to say that he wasn't great in the role prior, but now it's cemented. It's sort of the same thing, similar to like what happened with Heath Ledger, right? Because I think people would have loved Heath Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight regardless. But the fact that he passed right before that film came out, that just cemented it, right? And so like now he'll always be considered one of the greatest, having having one of the greatest live action comic book character portrayals, right? One of the best Jokers, if not there are some people who consider him the best Joker, period. And I think Chadwick will have that same sort of resonance, right? They've already announced that they're not going to recast him. I think eventually we will, maybe 10, 20 years from now, when we do another live action Black Panther, he'll come back. Definite. Oh, well, not him, but like we'll recast, right? The character of T'Challa will come back, is what I mean. But yeah, Boseman's performance, I mean, just great. Every time I watch it, I love it more. What can I say, man? And yeah, there's a lot of personal bias in it too, because Boseman was one of my favorite actors. Definitely an idol of mine, in terms of being an entertainer and being a professional and whatnot. Just the way he handled his craft and everything, was just spectacular. And so far and here's the other thing too, because in terms of like the portrayal of the character, right? Like Boseman's T'Challa is very different from the comics, because T'Challa in the comics is much more militant. He's very much no nonsense, like, very, very much so. I'm gonna tell you this. The way T'Challa is written in Civil War is closer to the T'Challa in the comics than what we got once we got the Black Panther solo film. The way he is in Civil War, that's the T'Challa from the comics. But Boseman, I mean, he was great. And he will be missed. Definitely will be missed. Okay, so on that note, we will go ahead and we will bring up honorable mentions. But before I give you all some of my honorable mentions, let's go to the chat and see if anyone has figured out my number one. Now, keep this in mind, guys. Keep this in mind. I'm going to throw this out there one more time so we can specify what it is we're talking about. This is, right, my number one, favorite live action comic book character portrayal. All right, everybody good? In film and television. Take that in consideration too. All right, so with that being said, the voting for the number one has now ended. And let's go ahead and see if anybody was able to figure it out in the chat. Let's see. What do we have? So Dijon Patterson Powers, what's happening, homie? He says, I'm guessing Christopher Reeve as Superman is one of your top 5. Lucifer Pitch Black says Charlie Cox Daredevil is your best live performance. Okay, that's a good one. That's a real good one. Really good guess. Let's see. And Adam Q gives some of his top 5: Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Christopher Reeve Superman, you mean Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the comedian, Ron Perlman as Hellboy, Wesley Snipes as Blade. Okay, Katakuri fan guessed Iron Man. Just missed that one. He also guessed Fassbender. Just missed that one too. Let's see, who else do we have here? Khalil Young, what's happening, fam? He says number 1, Hugh Jackman. Really good one. And let's see. Let's see if we have any other ones. The voting ended, people. The voting ended. It ended. Actually, the voting ended with Adam Q. Adam Q was the last one to get a vote in with Really, Adam? Okay. Adam got jokes tonight. But yeah, so yeah, Adam got his was the last one. His was the last one. The voting ended. But let me see what you guys are saying. The ones that came in. So Dijon said Christopher Reeves. Adam Q threw in Tom Welling Superman. Khalil said I missed number 5. Rand Black Gamer said Tom Welling as well. DeJohn said Michael Rosenbaum. Khalil said Lex Luthor from Smallville. Midnight Fang, that's a name I don't recognize. What's happening? Henry Cavill. Okay. All right. So, okay. All right. So we got some guesses. As I said, Adam Q had the last guess though. So I will go ahead and reveal to you guys that no one was able to guess the number one overall pick prior to Adam Q's comment. So real quick, before I go ahead and recap you guys, let's go over some honorable mentions, shall we? Okay, so honorable mentions, some of the ones you all mentioned. Some of the ones you guys mentioned in the comments. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is one of my favorites, of course. Khalil just mentioned Professor X. Honestly, as much as I like McAvoy, it got to be Patrick Stewart. His Professor Xavier, definitely. Hell, I would even argue his Professor Xavier in Days of Future Past was really good too. Let's see some of my other ones. Someone mentioned Ron Perlman as Hellboy. That's another one. Charlie Cox's Daredevil. That's definitely one. Let's see. Were there any other ones I wanted to mention real quick? People were mentioning Christopher Reeve, and as much as I like Christopher Reeves, so Tom Welling is my favorite live action Clark Kent. But that's not my favorite Superman at all. So that's why I didn't even have one on my list. Because my favorite Superman is still the in terms of an adaptation, is still the Timverse Superman is my favorite version of that character. And then of course in comics, my favorite version of that character is the Kingdom Come Superman. I mentioned earlier, brain fart just real quick. I was just talking about him. Dang, why did I bruh? Because I'm reading comments and I'm going through the honorable mentions at the same time. I see Jason Keefe mention Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. No, actually, no. Because it's the one I'm trying to remember the freaking name I just mentioned. I was just talking about him, and this is really embarrassing live on the air. But yeah, the Dark Knight Joker. That is my favorite live action Joker. Heath Ledger. There you go. Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger. Yeah, Heath Ledger's Joker is my favorite Joker. And that is one of, and yeah, in terms of live action Jokers, that's definitely my favorite one. I love that one. So, all right. Let me see. Was there another character I wanted to so what's funny is, okay, I'm gonna throw this out here real quick. So what's funny is, notice that this video definitely had to be specified in terms of top 5 favorite, because if I was to mention the best live action comic book character portrayal, best performance period, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, like best period. Like there's no question whatsoever, because he became the character. That is the character straight off the page. That's that character. Yep. J.K. Simmons, yeah. Fight me on that one, because he is pitch perfect. I see my man Random Black Gamer brings up Wesley Snipes' Blade, and you know what's funny though? Wesley Snipes' Blade, sort of the same thing with Robert Downey Jr. As Iron Man, because ever since that film came out, that has been the version of Blade that we've done in the comics, which in the whole Marvel universe, ever since that film came out. So that, again, that's one of those portrayals that totally redefined the character. So yeah. All right. So real quick, let me go ahead and bring up the slideshow one more time. So for those of you all just joining, we will go ahead and we will recap the top 5 before I get to my number 1 overall. All right. So real quick, let's recap. So Coming in at number 5 is Jackie Earl Haley as Rorschach. Coming in at number 4 is Michael Fassbender as Magneto. Coming in at number 3 is Mr. Thumbnail himself, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Coming in at number 2 is the late, great Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. And then that brings us up to the present. We just got done talking about some honorable mentions. And last but certainly not least, revealing, and some of you guys, for the record, some of you guys did get it right in the comments, but it was after the deadline. But yes, my number 1 all-time favorite live action comic book character performance is none other than Mr. Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor from Smallville. I have gone on record many a time. Actually, I've gone at length. There is, because Khalil requested this about it was the beginning of last year. He asked for me to do a top 5 on my favorite Smallville character portrayals. And Lex was number 1 on that list as well. Rosenbaum was number 1 on that list. This is my favorite Lex Luthor. Period. Like, this is my favorite Lex Luthor. Whenever I see the character now, this is what I'm always comparing that to. Whether it's in the comics, whether it's on television, whether it's in the movie. Other than the animated series, the Timverse Lex Luthor, which is voiced by Clancy Brown. Other than those, this is the Lex. For me, this is the Lex that all Lexes are judged by. This is the bar. And unfortunately, when it comes to live action portrayals, no one has made it across that bar. Not one. One of the biggest lamentations I have is the fact that Rosenbaum was never able to portray this Lex in a film. And he never wanted to voice him, which I find surprising. Of course, Michael Rosenbaum has done multiple voices in the DC animated series, the Timverse series. Because his biggest, most famous one is the Flash in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. But he also does the voice for Deadshot, and he does another voice too in he does a villain in Batman Beyond, and he does another small voice in the Timverse animated series. But he's actually, Katakuri fan, I thought he did voice Lex. No, he has not, to my knowledge. He has not voiced Lex Luthor once. He has not. He's only ever his only work as Lex has been on Smallville. That's it. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, he's never reprised the character outside of that series. Never. That's the only thing about that bums me out, because he was so freaking good as Lex, man. He was so good. Granted, the thing is, like, and you know what though? This is the one performance on this list that for the most part outweighed any of the writing that he had. Because of course he had, in my opinion, I think he had great material in the early seasons of Smallville, particularly 2 and 3. He had some really, really good material, but I'm talking about, like, even when the material started to wane in season 6, and especially by season 7, his performance, I think, still outweighed the writing. Like, it still outweighed the material. He was definitely worth tuning in for, if nothing else. If nothing else on the show, he was still, he's still one of the best parts of season 7. As abysmal as that season is, granted, it's not as bad as 8. I'm well aware nothing is as bad as season 8, but still, he was one of the best things about that season. But yeah, he was great. And like I said, I've talked, in regards to some of the other picks on this list in terms of like my perception of that character is that actor and their performance. But like I said, Rosenbaum's Lex tops all of them. So again, I'm waiting for the Lex that beats out his, because it hasn't happened yet. And especially and it's crazy when you take in consideration, because this October will mark the 20th anniversary of Smallville's debut, and in 20 years we still haven't beat this one, still haven't beat him. So yeah. All right. And real quick, I will. So that does it for my list. But real quick, I will go ahead, since my man Khalil is in the chat, and this was his request. I threw up the wrong banner. I will go ahead and pull up his top 5. And Khalil says Heath Ledger, Hugh Jackman, Tom Cavanaugh, Wesley Snipes, and Christian Bale are my favorite. Wow, that's a good list. That's actually a real good list. That's a really good list. All right, so I am coming up just past the 41-minute mark, and I did skim through some of the comments. Hang on real quick. I want to see. There was a question that I saw in here earlier. Yeah, Jason Keefe says, Larry, do you think Fassbender's Magneto was that good because Kevin Bacon's Sebastian Shaw was also great, so the way they played off each other uplifted both performances? True, but he was still good even outside of that, because he didn't have Sebastian Shaw in Days of Future Past, and he was great in that. Another one of my favorite moments that Fassbender, one of my favorite scenes with Fassbender, is the lecture that he gives Charles when they're on the plane in Days of Future Past, and then the exchange he has with Hugh Jackman afterwards. Like, that was really good. Yeah, that was really good. So he wasn't dependent on Kevin Bacon, is what I'm saying. Yep, DeJong says it right here. Yeah, I love his speech on the plane to Charles Xavier in Days of Future Past. Yeah, that was another really great scene. All right, and I don't see any other questions. Yep, that's about it. All right. So that is going to go ahead and wrap up this week's top 5. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for watching live. Thanks everyone for watching after the fact. As always, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow me on social media, facebook.com/OAW Entertainment, twitter.com/OAWENTMT, twitch.tv/OAW_entertainment. Of course, right here, youtube.com/OAW Entertainment. And last but certainly not least, if you have yet to do so, if you have a request for a top 5 that you would like to see done right here on the channel, become a patron at patreon.com/OAW. Select the top 5 tier. And once again, in addition to your request for a top 5 video of your choice, you also get access to all Patreon exclusive content. You get access to the OAW Vault, which is the original 2 seasons of Otaku Assemble Weekly, the weekly anime and manga review web series that kicked off the channel. You get access to the OAW Discord, which is now up. It is up and running. It is currently open to patrons only, so you will get first access to that. And then you also get an invite to join in on the live monthly Q&A held right here on the OAW YouTube channel, OAW Facebook page, as well as the OAW Twitch channel, because we simulcast that sucker. So again, that is patreon.com/OAW. Select the top 5 tier. All right. So, real quick, Lucifer Pitch Black, he says how much to request a top 5. That tier is $15 for a top 5. But yeah, you can go ahead, hit up patreon.com/OAW, and you will see that I have multiple tiers available, but specifically that is the one for the top 5 tier. And of course, the link to all of these social media and as well as Patreon, they're all listed in the description box below. Okay, so before I get out of here, one more announcement. Tomorrow will be the premiere of my review of Stan Lee's Mosaic. That should be, let's see, tomorrow is Tuesday, so I think I'm going to premiere probably actually, no, it'll be 8 o'clock. It'll be 8 o'clock tomorrow. It'll be the same time. Yeah, it'll be 8 o'clock. So keep an eye out for that, ladies and gents. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I am signing off. And until next time, peace.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?